I remember when I was a young boy, the first time I was able to actually go to the Shiite rituals where they beat themselves. And you have to have black outfit, which is a sign of mourning. I was so excited to buy this new black shirt and asked my dad to buy me these chains. There's a cluster of chains that people have, and they beat themselves with these chains. And we used to beat ourselves on the streets, thousands of young people trying to earn points and please Allah, that He would may have pity on us or forgive us. And more you torture yourself, more you get points, and hoping and wishing that you will go to heaven. So I was born and raised in Iran as a Shiite Muslim. I loved God as a young boy, and I always wanted to serve Him and to love Him. And when I was 16 years old, something happened to me that it changed my life. I was going to my cousin's wedding. Some of my relatives gave me a ride, and they had some alcohol. I didn't, and I was in the car. And I was so excited to go, and suddenly, as we are on the way, there's a checkpoint. They pulled the car over, they smelled the alcohol, and they took all of us out. They took us to confinement, took all our clothes off, bare naked. They start putting cold water on us, and they start beating us with these big, thick cables. And they were mocking us and laughing at us. They threw almost 50 of us in a small room. We were choking. I was so angry. I was feeling humiliated, hatred toward the people who torture me unjustly in the name of Allah for something I hadn't even done. So they took us to the court with shackles on our hands and our feet. And I sat before a judge, was a mullah, and he began to judge us based upon Islamic laws. My family found some connections and they paid some bribe. They actually released us and we had to just pay a fine. But that was the beginning of a long journey. I began to question Islam. Islam that I was loving and serving. What kind of religion is this, that there's so much injustice? My mother said, no, Islam is good. Only these mullahs, this regime, makes it look bad. I said, okay, fair enough. Then I began to do my own research, because before I would read the Quran, but just to earn points. But this time I began to read to see what actually Quran says. I saw so much bad things in the Quran. For example, Surah 9, verse 29, 30, Muhammad said that kill those who don't believe in Allah and in His Messenger. Surah 5:51, it says, do not take Jews and Christians for your friends, because they are friends of each other. So imagine all these years, all propaganda in the school. We heard bad things about America, bad things about Israel. We heard evil things about Jews and Christians. And suddenly, my eyes are being opened that this is not from God. A God who made this beautiful universe, the flowers and the birds and these beautiful rivers and mountains. This God could not be this cruel. Now I lost my faith in Islam. Then I said, so now what? Who is God? If there's no God, then what is the purpose of life? Who made this world? And if there is a God, then who is this God? I want to know Him. Shortly after that, many things happened in my life. I lost my father. My father passed away. As a result, I dropped out of a school. I left all my friends. I was isolated. And I was so broken, so hopeless. And I was crying out to God, God, if you're real, who are you? So then, when I was 19, I heard the gospel for the first time. Our power was out. I had a radio that was working with battery. So I turned this radio because I was sitting in this dark room, and then I came across a channel and somebody was talking about that he was going to commit suicide, to hang himself. And on the way, he heard this beautiful music. And he followed that sound of music and he arrived to this church. And he heard the good news of the gospel and his life changed. It was a glimpse of hope that began to shine in my heart. But nothing changed. Shortly after that, I heard again that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, that He came, that He died for me on the cross as a sacrifice, and then 3 days later He rose from the dead. And if I believe in Him, I'll be saved. I said, that's a bunch of baloney. I rejected the whole thing. I said, how could God have a son? God doesn't have a wife. I could not comprehend that God would have a son and He would come and die for us. But 1 week later, I was so depressed and so sad, and everything seemed dark and hopeless. And I heard the message again. So that day I had nothing to lose, and very skeptical. I said, Jesus, I do not know you. I was told you're a prophet. Now I hear you're the Son of God. I don't know who is telling the truth. I don't want to be a victim of religion again. But if it's true, I want you to show me. And the moment I say that, the heat went through my hand. I began to cry and weep It's like somebody put his hand in my heart and yanked out all that hatred and anger and bitterness and depression, because I hated the people who tortured me unjustly. That hatred turned to compassion. And I was so full of joy, so full of love. I went to my mom's house. My mom saw me and she said, "What happened to you?" I said, "Why?" She said, "Your face is shining." I told my mother that I became a Christian. I accepted Jesus in my heart. And she didn't have a negative reaction. And she was sick for many years. She had a pain that the doctor said you have to have surgery, and she had so much pain. I had this confidence that if I ask anything in the name of Jesus, He will hear me. So I prayed for my mother, and instantly pain left my mom. She never had the same pain, same problem ever again. And she was suffering for years, and Jesus Christ healed her. So then I began to look for a Bible. I'm a Christian now. I want to see what Jesus said. I was told when I was a Muslim that Moses brought the Torah, Jesus brought Injil, which is gospel, and Muhammad brought the Quran. But they told me the other two are distorted. They're changed, it's corrupted, so they're no longer valid. Only the Quran is the last revelation of God. But now I became a Christian. I want to see what Jesus says in Injil. So I began to look for Injil. And I went library after library, store after store, shop after shop. For 3 months I was searching. I couldn't find one. Finally, I came on the internet and I searched for the word Injil. And then a bunch of links show up and I clicked on them. But then it said access to this website is prohibited. So the government blocked the websites that actually had the gospel on them. So I studied computer. I used the VPN and I circumvent the blockage. And I click on the link and open all the books of the Bible. I saw all these books. I said, who are these people? Who is Timothy? I mean, what is Corinthians? I had never heard those things before. So I downloaded only the 4 Gospels. And I began to read. I think I read the 4 Gospels in 5 days. I was so glued to this computer. And as I was reading, the first 5 chapters of Matthew made me cry. Because I saw these words that I had never heard before. Love your enemies and pray for those who hate you and spitefully use you. And I began to ask this question, why this book is illegal? There's nothing bad in it. It's all about love. And I saw Jesus said, I'm the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays his life down for his sheep. And he introduced God as a loving father. I mean, all these beautiful, powerful words. I said everybody should know about this. So I began to copy the 4 Gospels on CD